it was easy for me to make a decision to cast my lot with impeachment of the Deputy President. Mr. Speaker, there can be much to say on the reasons. It is easy, for example, Mr. Speaker, to talk about the confessions of the Deputy President regarding 600 million that his son under 30 years was able to acquire. And he says, without tabling any evidence, that it was acquired from a bank. But he admits, Mr. Speaker, more importantly, two things. One, that the property in issue was government property, irregularly acquired without the usual procurement processes. He also admits, Mr. Speaker, that the son was able to be given, a moratorium of 1 year not to pay anything while enjoying the proceeds. And the DP thinks there's nothing wrong with that. It is for good reason that the anti-corruption laws in this country do not limit themselves to the individual. They go to the spouse and the children. It is for such reasons. Mr. Speaker, it is also interesting that the DP admits to abuse of office. How does it do that? The DP admits to abuse of office on the issue of KEMSA. It is important, and this bears repetition, that the evidence tabled by the Honorable Mutuse includes an affidavit by Dr. Mulwa. That affidavit at paragraph 5 is very instructive, and it says that the DP's phone calls was aimed at interfering and covering procurement irregularities. And that is on a direct affidavit. But more importantly, if you look at page 69, you will see the SMSs. And that SMS, the son of the Deputy President, Dr. Ikinu Rigathi, has the courage to say that there is a document for His Excellency we are trying to collect, not for himself, not for any other company, for His Excellency. And the fact, Mr. Speaker, that the DP admits to these processes and sees nothing wrong with it is a very serious matter of integrity. But, Mr. Speaker, I'll not speak to all those two. I'll speak to a more fundamental fact. The blatant justification of discrimination and insightful utterances against Kenyans. That is where I want to focus, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in this, the DP, and I've gone through the documents, there are various clips where the DP repeats this, that Kenya is a company and those who did not vote for Kenya Kwanza are not entitled to enjoy the proceeds from that company. What worries me, Mr. Speaker, is that with a straight face, the DP could appear on live television and justify these utterances. How does he justify it? He says that he is entitled to do that because there are some partisan political agreements or promises that were made. What does that mean? The DP elevates promises at a political party level above the National Cohesion and Integration Act, Section 13. He elevates those promises at a political party level above the Constitution of Kenya. There are 15 different articles that speaks against this. The fact that the DP can think that he can justify such utterances and elevate these agreements above the law and the Constitution is the clearest evidence that he must go because he has breached the Constitution. It is important to note that Article 145, 1A and C do not say that if you are respecting a political promise, then you can breach the Constitution. If that was to be the case, Article 24 would include that as a limitation. It does not include. If you want one reason, members, to impeach the Deputy President is because he has admitted to breaching the Constitution on account of a political promise. Mr. Speaker, Article 145, 1B is another interesting one, and it speaks to serious reasons to believe that the DP has breached the Constitution. You do not need the hard evidence. Members, remember, for conviction, that is for courts. We are not a court of law. Ours is to look at the evidence and see if there's a serious and reasons to believe. Those serious reasons speak to integrity. They speak to impropriety. And if you look at them and then find that there's some impropriety, then ground 7 will have been proved. Ground 7 talks of the issue of acquired property coming to 5.2 billion. What struck me, Mr. Speaker, is that the Deputy President took 1.5 hours to explain why he's not corrupt. Of the 2.5 hours, 90 minutes was to explain why he is not corrupt. The very fact that you take 90 minutes to explain you are not corrupt is prima facie evidence of corruption. Mr. Speaker, for one who is not corrupt, you can explain it in a sentence, period. To take 90 minutes is in itself prima facie evidence that there's corruption. Mr. Speaker, on the KEMSA issue, other than their affidavit and their interference, the affidavit, the DP then admits interference. Whoever advised the DP to do that live interview could not have had his interest at heart, but has made our work much the easier. Because now there are self-incriminations, confessions, and admissions that we can work with. Mr. Speaker, it is clear from yesterday's presentation that the Deputy President can no longer deputize the President. The role of any deputy under the Constitution is to deputize. Mr. Speaker, I crave for just 2 more minutes. So that, Mr. Speaker, even the fact, Mr. Speaker, it is not a ground of the impeachment by Honorable Mwangi Mutuse. But it has become a clear ground from yesterday's interview that the DP is incapable of deputizing the President. And if we needed an independent ground, that is very clear. It is also clear that the DP can no longer be part of a cabinet. It is a basic rule in terms of labor law. If you cannot work with your boss, if you cannot insubordinate your boss, if one person is to go, is the subordinate, not the boss. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I want to just close by addressing one issue, and it bears address. Some Kenyans, hello, Mr. Speaker, it is important to address this issue. Some Kenyans want us to divert attention from the impeachment that is before us. There's only one impeachment motion before us, and it's in respect of the Deputy President. Now, some people have said, kufa makanga, kufa dereva. Now, let me explain to you. First of all, when you say kufa dereva, kufa makanga, you must remember that in that bus there are passengers. And those passengers can die if you are reckless. In this case, those passengers are Kenyans. We as Parliament must navigate that issue so carefully that the passengers called Kenyans remain safe. Mr. Speaker, that is extremely important. Why? We are in a very unique position where we have a president and a deputy president, but we do not have an IBC. If anything happens right now, as we are going to, if we impeach the deputy president as we want to, as we need to, the position can be filled even without an IBC. But if there is no president and there is no deputy president, only the speaker can act for 60 days. Within those 60 days, there must be an election. We cannot currently have an election because we have no IBC. To have IBC commissioners, you need a president to nominate the board that will select them. Once the board is nominated and they propose a name, then the name must be forwarded again to us, and it's only the president who can nominate them. In other words, if you say kufa dereva, kufa makanga, you want absolute turmoil for all the Kenyans to die in that accident. That would be a very reckless act. Mr. Speaker, I am convinced, having looked at the Deputy President, having listened to him, that the Deputy President is not remorseful. He is not sorry for any utterances. He is not prepared to change. He's a man who must be saved from himself by impeachment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
George, order. George Murugara. Order, order. Order, honorable members, order. Order, Bensouda. Freeze. Freeze where you are.
Order, members.
Order, honorable members. I know the limits of exuberance are high. Order. Beatrice, freeze where you are. I know the levels of exuberance are high, but let's listen to those who are speaking. There's a lot of requests to speak, and I did tell you that in a motion such as this, Dr. Bukose will not ask to put the question. So let's listen to each other. Of course, the canned and band of debate cannot be ruled out in acknowledging good issues and disagreeing, but let's have some decorum. Those of you who speak, you have 5 minutes. If you can finish earlier, the better, so that many more can speak. Go on, Murugara. And members, when you are given permission to speak, if you wish to come to the dispatch box, do so. If you want to speak from where you are, do so.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I even state my position as regards this motion, it is important for me to express what the views of Kenyans are regarding this motion, and especially with a hindsight of the public participation that we did, and also from the public opinion which was communicated to Kenyans through an agency that conducts opinion polls. It is vitally important to remind Kenyans that through the public participation that we did on Friday and Saturday, it was overwhelming that Kenyans were in approval of the motion, and therefore we must respect their position. We must also remind Kenyans that an agency by the name TIFA has come up with an opinion polling, which again has indicated that Kenyans are in favor of the motion. Therefore, even as we debate today, even as we agonize over this motion, even as we consult the Honorable Mwengi Mutuse, as we have done from time to time, as regards this motion, it is quite clear that Kenyans are in favor of the motion carrying the day. I therefore respect the position of Kenyans. I respect the position of my constituents of the Raka, and I do confirm that I rise to support the motion. That today, the motion that has been brought to this House to have His Excellency the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, impeached, carries the day by a vote to be taken by the House. I must commend the Honorable Mwengi Mutuse, who is actually my Vice Chairperson in Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, for work excellently done. And repeat the position he has made, that we are not a court of law trying a suspect. We are a House of Parliament which is required to just consider whether the grounds advanced are actually substantiated. Do we have reasons to believe that the grounds advanced are substantiated? Having listened to the mover, having looked at the documentation, and I confess we have burnt midnight oil looking at this particular motion and the supporting documentation, these grounds are substantiated. Allow me briefly to just mention but a few. Ground number one, which is on dangerous divisions in the country, is propagated by the Deputy President. The Deputy President last night admitted and tried to qualify the admission that he had likened Kenya to a company. There is total difference between likening the government to a company and stating categorically that the government is actually a company. The Deputy President, in the clips we have watched, was candid in a statement to Kenyans that the government is actually a company and that each one of us has or does not have shares in that company. The net effect of this is, if you do not have shares, then you do not belong to Kenya. If you have shares, then you are more Kenyan than any other person who has lesser shares than you. This is the dangerous division which this House must frown against, and it must hold squarely against the Deputy President. The second admission he made, which is a very strong ground of this motion, is breach of collective responsibility. It has been clearly stated that the cabinet includes the Deputy President. The President is the the Deputy President is the principal assistant of the President. Having breached this doctrine of collective responsibility, and he clearly said he did so because he thought, in his view, in his opinion, it was unconstitutional to have decided the way they decided, clearly shows that the Deputy President is not able to work with the government in which he is mandated to work with. To have actually failed to assist the President so that you speak contra to what the President says is itself insubordination, as we have actually been told. The net effect is that even if the Deputy President was actually to survive this impeachment motion, our question is, where would he work? He cannot work with the President because he made another admission that this motion actually has the nod of the President. We have not had any PG, we have had no meetings whatsoever regarding this motion, but he is convinced that the President has a hand in this motion. If that is the case and he survives, who will he work with? Who will be his boss? Number two, he says whatever they do in the cabinet tinkers on the unconstitutionality. If that is what his position is, that the cabinet as it sits today would actually make decisions, which decisions they would have to execute at one time or the other, which are unconstitutional, which cabinet will he work with? Therefore, it goes without gainsaying that the personality of the Deputy President, His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, is untenable as far as the presidency is concerned and as far as the cabinet is concerned. 1 minute more. There has been an argument regarding the companies, and Honorable Mutuse has read out the companies, which nobody seems to know exactly why these companies were formed. Exactly what was the ulterior motive of forming these companies. But what I wish to point out regarding the companies, and what Kenyans should know, is that some of the properties under which the Deputy President aid, stating that these were properties of his late brother, are actually today his properties. Most important is a property known as Kuruwitu Home Resort. This property was actually sold to another company known as Kuruwito Properties Limited for Kenya shillings 250,000. As such of these companies indicate that Kuruwito Properties Limited is owned by Vipigo Beach Resort Limited and John Y. Mavenge. We therefore have to ask ourselves, who is Vipigo Beach Resort Limited? And CR12 indicates that this company is actually owned in shares by Keith Ekino Rigathi, Kevin Gachagua Rigathi, the estate of the deceased James Nderitu Gachagua. As we were told, these two persons named, Keith and Kevin, are not executors of the estate of the late Nderitu Gachagua. So if they actually own this company, which owns one of the properties of the deceased, purchased at Kenya shillings 250 million, then it goes without gainsaying that in fact, the Deputy President has an explanation to give regarding this. Finally, we've been told about the press statement he made in Mombasa, and this is the evidence of insubordination. The country was on fire. The country was burning. The president actually finished or completed giving what measures he would take to restore the country. The deputy president went to Mombasa, where he gave a statement which in itself was inciting to Kenyans, casting aspersions on the government, casting aspersions on our agencies, and at the end of the day, we have also seen him casting aspersions on the judiciary, which is supposed to be an independent institution. What we are required to do as members of parliament is to prove only one ground. The rest of them may fall or may succeed. But I can assure you, out of the 11 grounds, there is cogent evidence that the deputy president has committed acts inconsistent with his office, acts which in themselves warrant this house to impeach him today as we go to the vote. As I conclude, I urge the House, let us look at the bigger picture, which is the bigger picture of Kenya as a country. What we are doing is not to try and appease one person. We are trying to do this so that the country is saved. And we have always asked the question, the second in command who does not work with the first in command and his team, of what use would that person be to the country? With those very many remarks, I do beg to support this motion. Thank you.
Mishimbogo. Give her the mic.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, nasimama hapa kuunga mkono hoja hii ya kumng'atua mamlakani naibu wa rais Bwana Rigathi Gachagua. Na naunga mkono kwa sababu katiba yetu kifungu 159 imetupatia sababu mwafaka za kuweza kumng'atua naibu wa rais. Na sababu ya kwanza imezungumzia kukeuka katiba. Na nikiangalia Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua amekeuka katiba, haswa nikiangalia kipengele cha 10 ambacho kinazungumzia maadili ya kitaifa. Maadili ya kitaifa ikiwemo umoja, ikiwemo demokrasia, ikiwemo usawa. Mara nyingi sana amezungumzia mambo ya kwamba nchi yetu ni kama kampuni na ni ya washikadau. Na amesema ya kwamba washikadau hawa ni wale ambao tu wamepiga kura katika serikali ya Kenya Kwanza. Hivyo basi kukiuka maadili katika kifungu cha 10, kwa sababu tunajua Wakenya wote wanalipa ushuru na Wakenya wote wana haki sawia, wale waliopiga kura kwa serikali na wale ambao pia walikuwa katika upande ule mwingine, kwa sababu ni demokrasia. Unaweza kuwa upande wa serikali na unaweza kuwa upande wa upinzani. Vile vile pia tunaona katika kifungu 147 kinasema ya kwamba yeye atakuwa ni msaidizi mkuu wa rais katika serikali. na msaidizi mkuu pia atakuwa ni naibu katika zile kazi ambazo rais anazifanya. Lakini je, vitendo vyake vimeonyesha mambo hayo? Vitendo vimeonyesha ya kwamba yeye si msaidizi. Kuna wakati ule wa Gen Z, wakati rais ametoa hotuba hapa Nairobi ya kutoa mwelekeo wa kitaifa na jambo lile, yeye alikuwa Mombasa akitoa hotuba ambayo ilikuwa inazungumza tofauti na ile hotuba ya rais, na hapo pia akatia fitina katika taasisi zetu za kiserikali na kumlaumu bwana Nurdin Haji. Kwa hivyo imeonyesha ya kwamba yeye ni kama anachukua nafasi ile ya rais, hachukui ile nafasi ya kwamba yeye ni msaidizi. Vile vile pia tumeona ya kwamba naibu wa rais amekiuka katiba na kuwa amezungumzia utovu wa nidhamu kwa hali ya juu. Ile Kiingereza tunasema gross misconduct. Kwa mfano, aliita mmoja wetu Mheshimiwa Jematia na kumuita malaya. Unapoita mwanamke yoyote malaya, umeita wamama wote wa Kenya malaya. Sisi si malaya, sisi ni kina mama na sisi ni viongozi. Hatuwezi tukakubali naibu wa rais kutuita malaya. Akarudi akasema hawa wamama wa Mount Kenya ambao wako pamoja na mimi, hawa ni wamama, wote ni wamama wa rais, hawa ni wamama wake. Alikuwa anamaanisha nini? Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua, huna heshima kwa kina mama wa taifa hili la Kenya. Vile vile katika huo utovu wa nidhamu, tunaona sehemu ya Nyandarua alinunua shamba ambalo kina mama walikuwa wamelima mahindi, wamelima viazi, wamelima zile mushiri. Alimweka pale MCA na wakavuruga hiyo chakula yote. Angekuwa yeye ana hekima kama kiongozi, angeacha vikue, watu wavune, alafu achukue hilo shamba. Lakini ni kwamba hana nidhamu na wala hana kufikiria wa Kenya kama naibu wa rais, na wala hana ubinadamu. Vile vile pia sababu nyingine inakuwa kwamba ukikosa ufanisi, Kiingereza incompetence. Na mimi nataka niseme alikosa ufanisi kwa sababu alisema anapigana na pombe haramu na anapigana na madawa ya kulevya. Akaja kule pwani, kazi aliyofanya kubwa ni kutukana viongozi, kusema anajua wanaouza mihadarati, atawataja, atawashika. Aliwashika. Mihadarati iko ama hakuna? Na hii pombe haramu iko Mlima peke yake ama pia iko kule magharibi, iko kule sehemu ya Nyanza na iko hata hapa Nairobi? Tumuulize yeye mamilioni ambayo ameyatumia kwa hiyo kazi yametupatia natija gani? Yamefanya faida gani? Isipokuwa kunyakua ardhi, akiandika kwa jina la mke wake ati atatengeza sehemu za kuweza kunasua vijana kwa jambo hilo. Jambo jingine ni kashfa ya KEMSA. Imezungumziwa vizuri sana vile alivyowezesha watoto wake na makampuni yake na kuiba pesa zile katika kashfa hiyo. Hatuwezi kuwa na naibu wa rais ambaye juzi na jana alikuwa milioni 800, yani kama mali yake. Hivi karibuni ati ni bilioni 5.2. Kwa muda mchache tu pesa hizo umezipata wapi? Pia umedhulumu bibi wawili wa marehemu ndugu yako aliyekuwa gavana wa Nyeri. Utakuwaje upewe flati 10 na wao wapewe 5 na ni wawili na kuna na watoto? Jamani, ni sheria gani? Tunao sheria ile ya Kiingereza.
Give her 1 minute.
Tunajua hiyo sheria imezungumzia wakati mume amekufa, yani ni mabibi na watoto ndio wanaorithi. Sasa wewe itakuwaje uchukue huo urithi wote? Mpaka hoteli umechukua, ati uliandikiwa, ati ndugu yako alikupa. Jamani, wewe kama makamu wa rais muogope Mwenyezi Mungu na ujue ya kwamba hatuko hapa sisi katika ukabila. Tukiangalia act ile ya National Cohesion Integration Act inazungumzia yoyote atakayetumia maneno ya matusi, maneno ya kutishia ili kuweza kuleta bughudha katika makabila, yeye anatakikana ashtakiwe na amefanya makosa. Rwanda juzi na jana matamshi ya kikabila yaliwatia katika vita vikali vya kikabila, na wewe leo unataka kuleta vita katika taifa la Kenya. Tuliona molo clashes na hata wewe unasemekana ulikuwa kwa hiyo maneno. Tuliona
Time up. Time up, Mishi. Faith Gitau.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for according me this opportunity. And from the onset, I support this special motion. First, our supreme law of the land expects the presidency, which includes the president and the deputy, to be a symbol of national unity. In that case, the holders of that office are expected to portray a national image as opposed to an ethnic outlook. Honorable Speaker, our deputy president has been at the forefront in advancing a selfish ethnic agenda. For him, it is about his community and nothing more. After an election, Mr. Speaker, the government has to serve both those who voted for it and those who did not. It was wrong for the deputy president to advocate for shareholding in order to discriminate against the rest of the communities, which may create ethnic animosity against Mount Kenya region. As a county member of parliament, I think I have traversed this nation more than the deputy president. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, the deputy president, as the second in command, should act as a father figure to members of parliament and the community at large. Far from it, the deputy president, during his tenure, has been divisive and very egocentric. For him, it is about me, myself, and I. It is unfortunate that he has lowered the status and respect expected of such high office. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, when we went to the people urging them to elect this government, we gave them an undertaking that women must be respected. It is therefore, it disturbs me so greatly when the deputy president is at the forefront demeaning women in leadership, particularly those he perceives his enemies. He has no respect for women whatsoever. He has made a scathing public attacks on a woman High Court judge. And in addition, he has been attacking women, and especially members of parliament, me and others included in this house. And therefore, he can never, and he has no respect for women, and he can never work with women. And for those few remarks, I support.
Makali Mulu.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, I want to say the following. Impeachment of a deputy president is a matter of national interest and international interest, and is on the basis of that, Honorable Speaker, that people have to be very careful with what they do with this impeachment. Honorable Speaker, I want to remind the House that we are only one of the many parts of the process. This National Assembly will be making their decision. From there, we'll go to the Senate. And there's also the courts, if need be. And it's on the basis of that, Honorable Speaker, that we must isolate personal issues from issues which make sense to Kenyans. So that, Honorable Speaker, we don't, as a House, go for what I'll call mob justice mentality, and at the end of the day, the other stages, we lose it. Honorable Speaker, in the past, this House has been thrown under the bus because of this kind of mentality, where we go, make decisions, and out there, when they go to the courts, a number of our acts of parliament have been declared unconstitutional, basically because as members, we come here and we start shouting and assuming that other people there are not watching. Honorable Speaker, what am I saying? I've listened to the grounds of this motion, this impeachment motion, and I've listened to my friend, Honorable Mutuse, making the presentation and trying to justify some of these grounds, Honorable Speaker. I want to pick a few of them and ask myself whether they meet the expectations in terms of saying that the DP should be impeached on those grounds. The first one, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of demolitions. In this country, Honorable Speaker, when you go to our constitution, it clearly says that Kenyans have a right. They have their own rights. And if the government has made a decision to carry out demolitions, looking at the hierarchy in terms of governance, the topmost person in terms of hierarchy is the president, is not the deputy president. So in a situation where that decision is made, and the deputy president says he doesn't support it, the question is, should you be harassing the deputy president or the president? Because the person who took the oath as the head of the executive is the president or the deputy president. So on the basis of those demolitions, Honorable Speaker, it is going to be very unfair to start saying it is the deputy president who is in supporting the president, because at the end of the day, whose decision did carry the day? That's the question. The second issue, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of shareholding. Honorable members, let's be very honest with ourselves. We are all politicians. We have been voted in. We represent constituencies. How many of you can say that you are not practicing what is being explained in this motion? How many? Let's be very honest with ourselves. Let's be very honest with ourselves that most of you, majority of you, are doing exactly what is being said in this motion. It's only that don't say it publicly. That's the truth of the matter, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker.
Yes, Makali, there's a point of order.
Yeah, I have no problem, Honorable Speaker. I hope I'll be saving my time.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order, my name is Steve Mogaka from West Mogrango. Is the member on the floor in order to speak about what I practice? What does he know about what I practice? Can he restrict himself to what he does and not start throwing aspersions on members of parliament as if he is in their minds and he is in their practices? He's not. Is he not out of order?
Yes, Makali.
Honorable Speaker, I really don't see any point of order there. I ignore and proceed. Honorable Speaker, the issue of the judicial officer who is being accused as one of the grounds for this. Honorable Speaker.
Order, Makali.
And Honorable Speaker.
There's another point of order here.
Point of order.
Take your seat.
Yeah.
Give Farah the mic.
Mr. Speaker, is the Honorable Makali, somebody I have a lot of respect for. In order to compare a member of parliament who represents a constituency and the functions of that member and somebody who is the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya who represents the four corners of this country, and say that because the members of parliament go and develop, my presumption is that he thinks the CDF funds for one constituency cannot be taken to another constituency. But that's a different thing when it comes to national resources and the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya.
Makali, wind up, your time is up.
You know, Honorable Speaker, I hope this is not just to delay me not to say what I wanted to say, Honorable Speaker. I can see a very deliberate move to curtail me from saying what I want to say.
Do you want
Honorable Speaker,
from Nimrod Mbai?
Honorable Speaker, you know the thing is, Honorable Speaker, and Honorable Speaker, you need to protect me on a serious. You have been protecting everybody who has spoken. Unless also, Honorable Speaker, you're on the same side of those who are supporting. Because on a serious, Honorable Speaker, I don't think it's fair. You have been protecting everybody else. You can't protect.
Order, Honorable Makali Mulu. Order, Honorable Makali Mulu. You've been sitting here since we started. Order, Makali. Not a single previous speaker attracted a single point of order. If any came, the speaker will allow it. Not a single person raised a point of order. In fact, I'm being gracious by asking you, Nimrod Mbai wants to inform you, do you want this information? If you don't want it, you go on. But for you, order, Makali Mulu. You know, when you lose your cool, you also lose the argument. So just be composed, say your bit. The speaker has no dog in this fight. Just say what you want to say, finish, and we give space to somebody else. And any member who wants to stand on a point of order, it's within your standing orders. He has said he doesn't want your information. Go on.
You know, Honorable Speaker, with all due respect, people have been making their contribution here since morning. Nobody has been shouting point of order. So, and it's my democratic position to oppose the motion.
Order.
Honorable Speaker.
Go on.
Honorable Speaker, I've been elected by the people of Kisii Central to come to this house 3 times. And nobody can assume that I cannot make my contribution. Honorable Speaker, I've been saying, on the matter of judicial officer.
Wind up.
The judicial officer has been accused of corruption-related matters, Honorable Speaker. And there is a court case, or as we are speaking. Are we running away from accountability as a country? When do we allow the courts to do their work up to the conclusion that as a house we want to make this as a ground for impeachment, Honorable Speaker? This is what we are saying. There is separation of power, Honorable Speaker, and we should respect that. The other thing, Honorable Speaker, the India of officers has been called by the DP. Just called. How many of us here since morning have been called by the President? How many of us here since morning have been called by the Deputy President, pleading with us to either support or oppose? Can you be impeached on that note? On a serious note, we need to be. I'm saying, Honorable Speaker, from where we are seated as a house, you go for mob justice mentality, you lose it at the top there, you are trying to reduce the credibility of this house to the lowest grounds for opposition of this motion. Is it a situation where a thief has been sent to court to catch another thief? This is a situation. Honorable Speaker, this country has much more serious issues than what we are discussing. Mike Kisii.
Your time is up. Order. I will now order. Take your seat. Order. Robert Mbai, Boy. Order, Robert Mbai. Give him 1 minute to finish.
Yeah, Honorable Speaker. So I was saying, Honorable Speaker, Kenyans have said that Kisii Central in particular has said, kufa makanga, kufa ndereva, kufa mechanic. Because Kenyans are more serious issues. And when they die, we want a new renewal of this country, Honorable Speaker. This idea of mob justice, we are not going to allow it in this country. Kenyans have more serious things. I oppose, Honorable Speaker.
Millie Odhiambo to speak to the public participation report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I was just wondering if after speaking to the public participation, that I could also just make my contribution.
You have 15 minutes within which you have to speak to all those.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'll try. Mr. Speaker, earlier on in the morning, I had tabled before the House. I am, is it vertically challenged?
You are loud enough. Go on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was indicating that earlier in the morning I had presented a report of a public participation on the proposed removal from office by impeachment of His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, this is following the notice of a special motion by Honorable Mwengi Mutuse and in line with Article 1182 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, consequently, the House Business Committee approved a public participation program across all 290 constituencies, and I present on behalf of the House Business Committee. Mr. Speaker, I'll speak to the issue of the legal framework of public participation. And Mr. Speaker, Article 10.2 of the Constitution provides for the participation of the people as one of the national values and principles of governance. Mr. Speaker, Article 118 of the Constitution requires Parliament to ensure public access and participation of the people in its affairs. I will not go to the details, and you can read it for ourselves because of time. Mr. Speaker, I wish to note on my own behalf that in quasi-judicial proceedings like this, public participation is not really necessary, even though the courts are pronounced that they are. In my view, they are not actually necessary in a quasi-judicial processes like this, because, Mr. Speaker, it's almost like saying that the judiciary needs public participation in making their decision. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I also want to speak to the issue of timelines. And, Mr. Speaker, Parliament has spoken very clearly on the issue of timelines under Standing Order 64.2. And in summary, Mr. Speaker, I would want to say, if you read the standing order, that there are very strict timelines for a process or a motion like this. And, Mr. Speaker, in setting the period, the National Assembly was guided by the need to preserve the overarching constitutional principle of acting without unreasonable delay. The special motion for removal from office by impeachment of the Deputy President was therefore processed in accordance with the timeline set out under Standing Order 64. Mr. Speaker, in buttressing the necessity for expedited consideration of special motions, previous speakers of the National Assembly of Kenya expressed themselves on the question of timelines for considering special motions by the House when the special motions were filed proposing the removal by impeachment of the then Cabinet Secretaries, Honorable Anne Waiguru, Honorable James Macharia, Honorable Kaimenyi, and more recently, Honorable Mithika Linturi. In all the foregoing instances, the Speaker emphasized the need to dispose of a special motion as soon as is practicable to remove the anxiety of hangman's noose from the neck of a state officer proposed for impeachment. Mr. Speaker, you have seen the level of anxiety that the Deputy President has undergone, and indeed when he was actually giving the press statement yesterday, he was almost in tears. And that is why the House hastens the process so that the emotional turmoil is lessened having gone through this process, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Clerk of the National Assembly published advertisements on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of October and invited written submissions via hand delivery, post, or email until the 5th of October 2024. Mr. Speaker, all these were also advertised on the 4th of October and extended to the 5th in each constituency. To assist in this exercise, a public view template was made available to the public in both English and Kiswahili to guide submissions. On the 3rd and 4th of October 2024, 40,000 copies of the public view templates were also circulated as newspaper pullouts. This template was designated to provide clarity and precision in responses, whether for or against the motion. Number 2, to supplement other means of public input. And 3, to ensure both qualitative and quantitative feedback was captured, which is actually as has been directed by the courts in the past. Mr. Speaker, I just want to indicate that many means were used, including radio, TVs, and other means to publicize this process, including Twitter, or formerly, currently X, or formerly Twitter, and Facebook pages. Mr. Speaker, the public was invited to submit views either in support or in opposition of the special motion or offer other views. Mr. Speaker, I wish to laud Kenyans for their growing consciousness on their civic rights and duties. Mr. Speaker, people participated in various ways, as was witnessed both on electronic and social media, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, many Kenyans who are participated very expressively. Mr. Speaker, I think many of us saw people expressing their views in many, many ways, some of which I will explain later. However, Mr. Speaker, by the nature of newsmaking, we saw the areas where the views were expressive, but much less in the areas where the views were not that expressive. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the report, and I want to download the parliamentary team, they have even captured photos of members of the public giving their views in constituencies very peacefully. But Mr. Speaker, as I want to repeat, that by the very nature of newsmaking, what we will see are the dramatic scenes. And those we saw, I don't think it is shame as such, it's their right and they can share. Mr. Speaker, I wish to indicate I wish to report that based on all that, over 200,000 responses were received, of which 65.1% supported the motion, while 33.81% opposed the motion, and 1.09% offered neutral or other alternative views. Mr. Speaker, some of the members in contributing have actually alluded to some of those alternative views. I've heard the speaker right before me talking about the issue that Kenya has very many pressing issues. Mr. Speaker, indeed it is true, Kenya has many pressing issues, and as a House, we are already seized of those issues and are indeed already dealing with some of those issues. One of those issues that the Parliament has raised is the issue of education, the education system, and we have called the CS for Education more than 2 times to deal with that issue. Again, on the health issue, we have also invited the CS for Health amongst other officials. So indeed, the House can chew and walk at the same time. Mr. Speaker, when a motion is brought of this magnitude, Parliament, by its own standing orders, must stop everything else and give priority to this motion. And that is why Parliament stopped all its business on Thursday and focused on this, and all members of Parliament went to their constituencies to deal with this issue. Mr. Speaker, I wish to indicate that given that this is a very special public participation process, a first of its kind, Mr. Speaker, since the Constitution was promulgated, there were some challenges, but which did not affect the overall product of public participation. Mr. Speaker, some of those challenges were as follows. Mr. Speaker, there was political interference at public forums such as Bomas of Kenya and Murang'a. Mr. Speaker, there was violent disruptions in areas like Olkalau, Kipipiri, and Nyeri Town. Mr. Speaker, there was incomplete or unclear submission, including forms without identifying information or contradictory responses. Mr. Speaker, there was low turnout in some constituencies due to insecurity, such as in Bura. Mr. Speaker, public expectation for monetary compensation for participation was also experienced. Mr. Speaker, there was late submission of forms and memorandum in some instances. There were threats of violence towards officers and inappropriate language in some email submissions. And Mr. Speaker, there was pressure from some constituencies such as Olkalau and Kipipiri for officers to declare results prematurely. On the whole, Mr. Speaker, most places in the country went on uninterrupted. And the results that I just indicated to you, Mr. Speaker, are based on that. Mr. Speaker, because of time, and I would like other members to speak, I would want to invite members to look at the report that has been tabled by the House Business Committee. Mr. Speaker, I'll just speak very briefly on my own account. Mr. Speaker, I wish to indicate on my own account as a member of Suba North constituency that what we are going through post-2010 constitution, I want to agree with the honorable member that has spoken and said that it's a very important process, because indeed it is. Mr. Speaker, it is a defining moment constitutionally and a first of its kind since 2010. It is both a legal and a political process. Mr. Speaker, the Supreme Court in the Sonko's case confirmed that impeachment is not just about civil liability or criminal culpability, but it's about accountability, political governance, as well as policy and political responsibility. Mr. Speaker, I'll speak very briefly to that in the end, but I want to speak to the issue of grounds. I'll be very brief, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are 3 grounds that have been given under Article 150 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak to the issue, the 3rd ground, which is gross misconduct. Mr. Speaker, I have actually looked at the Constitution and there is no definition of gross misconduct. I have looked at our laws and there is no definition of gross misconduct. Mr. Speaker, Black's Law Dictionary defines gross misconduct as a dereliction of duty, unlawful or improper behavior. Mr. Speaker, on that account alone, virtually every ground that has been stipulated here would amount to gross misconduct. Mr. Speaker, speaking as a governance expert, perhaps it's one of the areas we may want to change in future in the Constitution. Because I was saddened when Nancy Baraza was removed from office for just touching somebody's nose. Only. Even pinching. Yeah? Touching somebody's nose. So, Mr. Speaker, what I would like to say, Mr. Speaker, is based on these grounds, it is easy to impeach. Mr. Speaker, if you just had me 1 minute, please. Mr. Speaker.
Okay, you have 1.5.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would just want to say that I've been by nature, I know I'm a very tough person, but by very nature, I'm also very empathetic. And I've been sympathizing a lot with the Deputy Speaker, especially, Deputy President, sorry, especially when he prays, because I'm also a prayerful person. But Mr. Speaker, I would want the Deputy Speaker to learn from this.
Deputy President.
Sorry, Deputy President. Sorry, I don't know why I keep going to Honorable Gladys. Mr. Speaker, in my book, which I've just released, Rego Beregt, Principle 9, the power of words, taming the tongue. Mr. Speaker, if the Deputy President had been quiet, he would have carried many people in this house. But he did not tame the tongue. And every time he spoke, he's just showing further and further division of the country. And I feel sad as a country that many people, even my friends, because I have many friends in Central Kenya, who are calling me, are not calling me from a governance perspective. They are telling me, please save us Mount Kenya. Mr. Speaker, when will we ever reach a point as a country when we look at governance issues and not ethnic parochial issues that have divided the country for a long time, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, I do empathize with the Deputy President, and I wish the hand he extended to the President, he had done it much earlier. Mr. Speaker, I hope he learns from the experience of Coriolanus of ancient Rome, who had won many battles, and his fame preceded him. But when he got in politics, his mouth brought him down. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Gladys Sholei, not information. There's nobody on the floor. Speak. You wanted to speak.
Okay, but just allow me to correct one issue that has been raised twice on the issue of Nancy Baraza. Nancy Baraza was alleged to have pinched the nose of someone. It was never confirmed. The CCTV footage did not reveal it, and she was found with no guilt on that point. So as a woman leader, I want to correct that. Nancy Baraza served this country faithfully. So let us correct the Hansard. Thank you.
Go on.
Honorable Speaker, I can proceed.
Go on.
Yes, I am. Okay. Honorable Speaker, thank you very much. And again, before I proceed to support this motion, allow me to clarify just one issue. I have been accused by the Deputy President of bias, indicating that I cannot preside over these impeachment proceedings because I am biased. I want to confirm that when Okay, thank you. I want to confirm that I'm not biased at all. When I made the statements that I did make, I made them as Member of Parliament for Uasin Gishu County and not as a Deputy Speaker sitting on the Speaker's chair. You can only accuse me of bias if I make those statements from the Speaker's chair. I am first a Member of Parliament before I am Deputy Speaker. If the law contemplated a situation where I am gagged as Deputy Speaker, I would have been expected then by that law to resign like the substantive Speaker does in that case. And therefore now I want to proceed to go on to support the motion, speaking as an ordinary member of Uasin Gishu County and not as Deputy Speaker. I have a few points to point out. The Deputy President has been engaged in various conducts that meet the threshold for impeachment. One, on numerous occasions, he has insisted that Kenya is a company of shares, and this is contrary to the Constitution, Article 10, and also our national values. I also want to bring attention of the House that he has contravened his oath of allegiance. When he took his oath of allegiance, he says, in full realization of the high calling, I assume as Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, I swear and affirm that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Republic of Kenya. The oath of allegiance does not mention Murima, it does not mention Mount Kenya. He bears allegiance to the Republic of Kenya, not to his wife and not to his sons. So he has gone against his oath of allegiance. I also want to go on to refer to the press conference that the Deputy President held in Mombasa on the 25th of June, 2024. In that particular press statement, he distanced himself from the Finance Bill 2024. As a member of cabinet, in his position as Deputy President, he is collectively responsible for all the decisions that are made in cabinet, and therefore, in distancing himself, he violated Article 153 of the Constitution. The Finance Bill, as we know, is the overarching legislative document that underpins the revenue-raising measures for the executive in order to achieve its programs. If the Deputy President did not agree with the decision of Cabinet on the Finance Bill, he ought to have held his peace and his tongue or resigned as a member of the Cabinet. There is no two ways about it. And furthermore, by the mere fact of holding a presser at a time when the country was in crisis, when the President has addressed the nation, he went on to have his own one-man show of a presser. That is the greatest definition of gross misconduct. It is pure insubordination. No one can do that. It is unthinkable for a principal assistant to contradict the principle. If you want to contradict the principle, you resign your position and go and contradict them from outside. Thirdly, the deputy president also distanced himself from the activities of the Nairobi Rivers Commission and claims that the activities were undertaken contrary to the law. The work of the commission was again endorsed by cabinet. The government followed laid down laws regarding eviction and resettlement of members of the public. The deputy president knows that this has been a crisis in this country and in contravention of the laws by having people living by the riparian zone. And in this year, people had actually died. And in order to prevent further deaths in future, cabinet in its wisdom decided to relocate the members of the public. And again, he again failed to take collective responsibility with cabinet, did not resign, but went on to countermand the decisions that had been made in cabinet. Furthermore, he has taken an oath of secrecy and therefore cannot publicly divulge what was decided in cabinet. Again, there he has contravened the law. 4, during the press conference in Mombasa on the 25th of June 2024, the deputy president accused the Director General of NIS of providing faulty intelligence and firing some senior officers. As a state officer, and most importantly, as a member of the National Security Council, under Article 240, the members of the National Security Council, at Clause 2B, the deputy president is a member. He then cannot discuss intelligence briefs that come to his knowledge during the proceedings of the National Security Council. Again, with that, he has gone against the Official Secrets Act and his oath of secrecy. And even if he had any reservations, he has opportunity as a member of the National Security Council to raise it at the Security Council proceedings and even to raise it to the president in person, but not to come as if he's an ordinary citizen who is in the opposition and then speak about it in public. That is wrong. In fact, it is juvenile. It reveals him as a person who is unhinged and cannot control their tongue. 5, during the rally in Githurai, Nairobi, which was presided over by the deputy president, with some members of parliament present, he was involved in leading chants that said, Ruto must go. Ruto is a one-term president. He never denounced those statements. What that amounts to is that he is guilty of treason and other allied offenses. That is the Penal Code, Section 40. And I will read it out, just that there is no doubt. It says that any person owing allegiance to the Republic of Kenya or else of Kenya, if they compass, imagine, invent, devise any deeds with the intention of the death, the maiming, the wounding, the imprisonment, or restraint of the president is guilty of treason. So Rigathi Gachagua is guilty of treason. And it also amounts to gross misconduct. So the deputy president cannot therefore expect to remain in his office as deputy president when his party to efforts to remove the president, to undermine the president, and to campaign against the president. His tenure as a principal assistant is not tenable by any interpretation or meaning. And 6, during his appearance in church in Meru, the deputy president insinuated that if he is removed, the tribes of Kenya who are native to the Mount Kenya area will revolt and be violent. Again, that is treason and other allied offenses. And he also goes against the National Cohesion and Integration Commission Act with his utterances that relates to ethnic profiling. And even as late as yesterday, if I had any doubt in my mind that Rigathi Gachagua must be impeached and removed from office as Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, he made it very, very clear yesterday. Yesterday, he went on to disclose details of the Kenya Kwanza pre-election pacts. This is contrary to non-disclosure agreements that were signed by parties. And without any due regard to these non-disclosure clauses, and without seeking consensus from other principals who are party to those pacts, he went on to sing like a parrot on national television. That is unbecoming behavior of a person who holds an office as high as that of the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. And lastly, I want to point out that all the violations that I have set out in support of this motion were brought upon and the evidence said by the Deputy President himself. This is not from anywhere. It's from his own very utterances. Practically, this is what the Deputy President has done. He has dosed paraffin on himself and he has lit the match all by himself without the help of anybody else. And so he has only himself to blame. I support this motion. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Adan Kainan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, from the onset, allow me to thank the Honorable Mutuse for being courageous, for being focused, and I'm sure in the annal of the history of this country, Mr. Speaker, and the history of the 13th Parliament, Mr. Mutuse, you will be appreciated. Mr. Speaker, having said that, I've also gone through this impeachment clauses, Mr. Speaker. The 11 clauses, Mr. Speaker, are cogent, are rich in evidence, Mr. Speaker, and clearly demonstrate the actions, the omissions, the commissions of the Deputy President. Mr. Speaker, I've had an opportunity to reflect, because there's one thing that the DP has been using, that is a truthful man. I went back to the ironic definition, how a truthful man is supposed to be described in the Bible, in the Quran, in the civil society, Mr. Speaker. And in those definitions, Mr. Speaker, I have missed an iota of resemblance on anything that I can associate with those actions and the activities of the Deputy President, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these clauses, we are a member of Parliament. We as members of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, our work is to protect the Constitution. Our work is to oversight, and our work is to do one of these things that have been demanded today by this impeachment, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in all these clauses, the common denominator is the DP has abused his office through corruption, through tender-preneuring, through disparaging and disobeying his boss, through undermining devolution, and Mr. Speaker, equally also by being a threat to our sovereignty. Mr. Speaker, this country is a collection of many nation states. The Kikuyu nation, the Somali nation, the Luya nation, and this is what we are proud of, Mr. Speaker, and this is what constitutes the sovereign Republic of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the other day, and I want to repeat this, and you will excuse me for saying this country has a very rich history. In 1982, one gallant son from northern Kenya called Gerald Mahmoud saved the Kenyans from militarism. And I think we all appreciate it. He's still alive. Mr. Speaker, in 2007, another general by the name General Muhammad Ali saved the Kenyans from the effects of the socio-political turmoil of 2007. And Mr. Speaker, the post-election violence. In 2024, another son from that region, Nurdin, has also saved this country from the effects and activities of Gusii and his cohorts, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that doesn't take away the contributions of many other Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, in all this, what I have gathered, and we have been in Parliament together, we are doing a favor for Gusii. We are doing a favor for the executive, members of the executive. We must save Gusii from the members of the executive, the other members, because he's a threat to their continued performance of their job, Mr. Speaker. We must also save Rick G from the members of the judiciary because he keeps on attacking them, Mr. Speaker. We must also save Rick G from the members of the legislature because he attacks them, Mr. Speaker. We must also save Rick G from the 47 tribes, Mr. Speaker, because he keeps on attacking them. Mr. Speaker, we must also save Rick G from the remnants of Mau Mau because he keeps on abusing their name, Mr. Speaker. We must save Rick G, Mr. Speaker, because he abuses our ladies, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we must also save Rick G from the people of Mount Kenya because he abuses their names and he wants to have them collide with other Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, isolate them, Mr. Speaker. And finally, on that aspect, we must save himself because last night, when I watched that teleprompter-driven press conference, Mr. Speaker, one thing that came to my mind is he was incriminating himself, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in all this, we have a president who has applied all his gingerly approach in managing the affairs of this nation, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, what is coming to mind is we have a DP who in every statement that he utters abuses, uses the Constitution wrongly, threatens, and demeans everybody. And it's because of this, Mr. Speaker, that we as a parliament, we must go in history and support this impeachment, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, finally, you have ruled on this. And I don't want my colleagues here actually to be threatened. What you are doing is right. It is within your legislative right, Mr. Speaker, for those of us who have elected to support this by appending our signatures should also be available to vote today in our numbers to impeach Rick G. And by doing that, we'll be saving Kenya. I support, Mr. Speaker.
John Makali. John Makali.
Give me the mic. For the opportunity you've granted me to also weigh in on this motion. Honorable Speaker, we are facing a constitutional moment where our constitution is being tested. At the outset, let me state that I have nothing as against the Deputy President or where he comes from. But Honorable Speaker, the Deputy President is not an ordinary person. The Deputy President is actually the second in command in our nation. Before he assumes office, Article 74 of the Constitution requires him to take an oath of office. And Honorable Speaker, I've looked at the oath of office of the Deputy President. It requires him to be faithful to the Republic, to give counsel and advice to the President without fear or favor. Equally, the Deputy President is a ranking state officer, and Article 74 of the Constitution requires, Article 75 of the Constitution requires that in the conduct of a state officer, he needs to bring honor and dignity to this office he holds. Honorable Speaker, looking at the grounds that have been availed, I want to state here categorically, Honorable Speaker, that the Deputy President has violated the Constitution and his oath of office. Why do I say that, Honorable Speaker? One, the Constitution of Kenya, which the people of Kenya gave to themselves, requires that Kenya is a unitary state, regardless of the regions it has. Equally, Article 10 of the Constitution puts national unity, patriotism, as a key component of our national values in the discharge of our duties. Several other times, and I want to speak to this very clearly, Honorable Speaker, when the Deputy President, the truthful man he says he is, attended a church service in Bungoma, and we actually requested that we had several other problems which needed to be handled, specifically blocked road programs, employment opportunities. The Deputy President, the truthful man that he is, told us on our faces that according to the votes which we got, whatever we had gotten was enough and we had no duty to keep on asking for more projects. That is the Deputy President who is supposed to be the principal assistant to the President and who is supposed to portray national unity. Equally, Honorable Speaker, The Deputy President yesterday clearly said that the government that we have now, the Kenya Kwanza government, is a government of shareholders. Because he said the government was formed because of shareholding agreements. Once you become a deputy president, you are the face of national unity. He cannot really keep invoking the promises which were made, the agreements which were made prior to the government being formed. What will happen to those other countries, other areas which are not part and parcel of those particular agreements that were alleged to have been made? Equally, Honorable Speaker, the Deputy President has committed an offense, or is reasonably expected to have committed an offense. When he was asked in his visits which he makes throughout the country, he said that he visited Keyo Marakwet, he visited other parts of the country, and he has been given animals. And those animals, he has kept them at his home, and he now has a herd. Article 76 of the Constitution clearly indicates that when you receive a gift or a donation, you are supposed to donate it back to the Republic. You don't keep it up as your reward at home. So looking at this, Honorable Speaker, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya has committed a corruption offense for which he needs to go home. Honorable Speaker, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya is supposed to be above board. He is supposed to be the #2 citizen who needs to preach national unity. He is supposed to be the president in waiting. He is supposed to be actually the president in waiting, so that if anything happens, he is supposed to take over the reins of the country. Honorable Speaker, if we look at the utterances that have been made by the Deputy President, let us look at the KEMSA case. I've looked at the affidavit of Dr. Andrew. It is very, very clear that the Deputy President was actually conflicted in the KEMSA supply case, and Article 75 of the Constitution requires all state officers to avoid situations where they are in conflict of interest. And in leading this, the Deputy President should be at the forefront of avoiding situations where he falls in a situation where there's a conflict of interest. Taking into account all these 11 grounds that have been made, I have no doubt on my mind, Honorable Speaker, that for his arrogance, that for his breach of the Constitution, that for his defiance, that for his statements, that for his conduct, he is not a truthful man as he pretends to be, and we cannot have such a person as the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. It is high time, Honorable Speaker, that we now seize the dragon of tribalism, we now seize the dragon of ethnicity, we now seize the dragon of regionalism and slay it and get our nation moving forward. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this particular motion and say the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya must go, and we have to start up a fresh page. I support, Honorable Speaker.
Julius Ole Sunguli.
Mr. Speaker, I come from an older period, being a member of KANU, and having served in the KANU government. And I find some things rather difficult to understand. Because, Mr. Speaker, this position of Deputy President is a new one. It came in 2010. The position of Vice President had very, very good gentlemen. I still recall the way the office was occupied by the Honorable, unfortunately late, George Saitoti, Kijana wa Malwa, and indeed, the fine gentleman that we have in politics now, Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka. Those people, Mr. Speaker, understood their job. If I were to stand today and accuse the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, I would accuse him of only one thing. He does not get it. This particular job, he does not know the job description of a deputy president. For one, Mr. Speaker, the Constitution of Kenya says that there shall be a president. And then that president will be assisted by a deputy president. Now, assisted by a deputy president. That means, Mr. Speaker, that our constitution foresees a situation where we have one driver and one makanga. And one is not trying to do the job of the other. Now, how did we get into a situation, Mr. Speaker, where we now have two bosses in the country? We have the president, who is the boss, and we have the deputy president, who says he's also the boss. Now, if there is something that we have to do in this house, is to resolve that dispute. The country cannot run when we have...
Give Wamchomba the mic. Yes, Mheshimiwa.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of order to just ask whether the word makanga is parliamentary. I just need a clarification. The word makanga, whether it is parliamentary language. Is the member in order to use that kind of language today?
Honorable Wamchomba. Order. Yes, Millie. Yes, Millie.
I don't know if Honorable Sunkuli has allowed me to inform you. Yes, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to inform Honorable Sunkuli that you can use those words so long as you put in inverted commas, because you are reporting. So when it is reported, like in the case where people are talking kufa makanga, kufa dereva. Mr. Speaker, I even wanted to speak to it by saying that it is actually people saying that are crucifying the DP. By saying it should kufa, the motion here is on the, in quote, makanga. It's not on the dereva. So people want to bring the motion on the dereva in quotes, can bring, but the one we are dealing with now is on makanga.
But for Honorable Wamchomba, language is dynamic. It's living. It grows. That's why you now find Kiswahili words in the Oxford English Dictionary. And by ordinary usage, every single Kenyan knows what makanga means. And Sunguli was not mixing languages. He spoke in the manner like he was quoting.
I will definitely need another extra time. But Mr. Speaker, so our constitution foresees a situation where the president and the deputy president operate in harmony. Now, Mr. Speaker, if your principal job is to assist the president, and your marriage with the president is now irretrievably broken down, the only purpose of this house is to say that there is actually no more marriage, and that the deputy president can no longer perform his duties as a deputy president. And so, if that happens to be the situation, then what remains? I remember the late President Moi telling us that the problem with Africans is that they don't resign until they are kicked out. In this particular situation, because the marriage is irretrievably broken down, it ought to be the case that the deputy president ought to say, as a gentleman, that this thing is not working, I'm going to leave it. He has said that this is like a company. And in a company, people exist in order to have a common good. And the mixture of strategy and vision and deep understanding of their core business is what will bring fruits to this job. Mr. Speaker, I believe myself that there are two mistakes that have been made here that need to be looked into by this House. One is that the Deputy President ought to believe in the Republic of Kenya. Because if I look at the number of times, if I Google the number of times the Deputy President has pronounced the word Mount Kenya, and the number of times he has pronounced the name Kenya, the number of times he has said Mount Kenya are more than the times he has said Kenya. A person who takes the oath to be the Deputy President of Kenya must be a person who pronounces the words Kenya more than the one person who pronounces the words of his region. Patriotism. And secondly, the person must actually believe in his boss and must...
Give him 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, if your core business is to work for your boss, you must believe in him. If you don't believe in him, what are you doing with him? The second thing is that you must believe in Kenya. If you don't believe in Kenya, that you believe that your responsibility is to look after the shares of your side of Kenya, then what are you doing with the rest of the country? Mr. Speaker, I want to finish by urging that next time we appoint a deputy president, next time the president appoints a deputy president, let him understand that that is a serious business. You must appoint a person who will actually understand that he's going to be a president if something bad happens. Don't do it just because he brings votes. Let us be serious about this responsibility, because that is where we are going wrong. Someone is saying that he qualifies just because he brought in the votes, not because he can actually appeal to the rest of the Kenyans and can be trusted by the rest of Kenyans. I therefore, Mr. Speaker, vote to impeach.
Osoro.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, from the onset, I want to state that I support this motion entirely without putting or proposing to put a comma or full stop on any ground that has been placed, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to remind the honorable members that Clinton was almost impeached, or the impeachment attempt against Clinton in 1998 was out of the Monica Lewinsky.
Read your history properly. He was actually impeached.
Exactly. Monica Lewinsky matter. Of course, it was overturned later by the courts and other issues, but I'm saying it was out of that scandal, the very small scandal of the sexual scandal in White House. Honorable Speaker, I want first to start by proposing this question, Honorable Speaker, to honorable members. How would you feel that when you eventually transit to the next world, you are dead, that your brother or the person that you choose to entrust to take care of your wife and your children's property decides to start using those property for his own personal use? As members, how would you feel that? That is the question that honorable members should be making, should be answering themselves before they vote today, later today, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the late Governor Nderitu Gachagua passed on 24th of February 2017. Between 2017, Honorable Speaker, to 2024, it is indeed true that the late governor then, amongst Mwai, Madenge, and Njoroge, he entrusted Mr. Rigathi, the deputy president, as the executor of his will. But, Honorable Speaker, between 2017 and 2024, the property that, and this is, Honorable Speaker, is in the documents that Mwengi Mutusa has shared, Honorable Mwengi Mutusa has shared with us and tabled in this House, that between 2017 and 2024, he's been able to alter or tamper with those companies, make himself directors in some of those companies, transfer some of those properties to himself, disinherit some of the beneficiaries, the kids of the late, and put them to himself. And then one particular case, Honorable Speaker, is the Olive Garden Realtors, Honorable Speaker, that was actually altered on 2nd of March 2022, using the position of power to his own advantage, Honorable Speaker. How can you explain that? He will then tell you, Honorable Speaker, that I bought, it's willing buyer, willing seller. Really? Does it mean that all your money that you've acquired, which is also questionable, the only property that you could identify is the property that is under the care or is supposed to help the family and the widows of your late brother? How wicked can we be? Then you come in full glare of camera and tell the members of the public that please let my brother rest in peace. I decided to hold this property in trust for them, when the brother, the kids, the widows, and the daughters and sons of the late are languishing in poverty and complaining and crying. It is total shame. You cannot use your position for that. Honorable Speaker, these are practical examples, and I'm telling honorable members to acquit themselves and go through ground 7, Honorable Speaker. It is actually on page 16 to 30. This is nothing but gross violation of the law, Honorable Speaker, taking advantage of their own power, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, and you know, even to prove that, you will realize that those companies, by the time the companies were being, some of them were being registered, the new ones, and the time the transfer of these properties were taking place, Honorable Speaker, the whole thing is actually contemporaneous. You need not to be a rocket scientist to know that clearly this is fraud and this is this was taking advantage of the late. I want to remind the Honorable Deputy President of the good book in the book of Proverbs chapter 15, verse 25, that the Lord will tear, that's what the Bible says, that the Lord will tear down the house of the proud, but he will establish the boundary of the widow. That is why we are here today. If there is no other reason that has brought us here, Honorable Speaker, it is to protect the family that is being disinherited of their property under coercion, blackmail, and threats. If there is no other reason, Honorable Speaker. And that is why, Honorable Speaker, even it's actually biblical again. In the good book, Honorable Speaker, of the book of Exodus 22:22, that do not take advantage of the widow, do not take advantage of the fatherless. If you do, and they cry to me, I will certainly hear their cry, and my anger will be aroused, and I will kill you with the sword. Today, we are using the sword today here to protect, and it is biblical, it is religious. Today, we are using the sword to impeach you, just to protect the children that are suffering, that you threatened, that you blackmailed, that you told that if you dare speak or utter a word, I am the Deputy President of Kenya, elected by 7.2 million people. I will finish you. Finish who? We will finish you today in this floor of the House. Honorable Speaker, I mean, there is nothing more for me, Honorable Speaker, on this matter. There is nothing more than cabinalism. I mean, really, like you are left under the care of the properties of your brother. Then you take them to your advantage. Your immediate brother. Then on TV you tell us that, you know, in the will, my brother gave me, and then he gave my wife, then he gave my sons. What about his children? What about his widows? What about his sons? What about, how proudly can you say that you are only enjoying the property of your brother? For that reason alone, Honorable Speaker, we say Gachagua must go. If there is no other reason, today, Gachagua must go. Honorable Speaker, I relate this case with the case of, I relate this matter, Honorable Speaker, with the Spelunchian explorers case, Honorable Speaker, where the members...
Yes, Kipchumba. Timothy Kipchumba.
Honorable Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 91 on the issue of statement of facts. Honorable Speaker, is it in order for the Honorable Soro to claim that the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua disinherited the wife of the late brother? Honorable Speaker, can he table the facts before this House that he disinherited?
Honorable Kipchumba, order. Order, Osoro. Honorable Kipchumba, those are the facts that the move of the motion placed on the table. It appears you probably were not in the House then. Finish up, Osoro.
Honorable Speaker, I'll refer the honorable member to pages 16 to 30 of this very motion that was tabled in this House, Honorable Speaker. And these are facts. And I've also said that, Honorable Speaker, on this particular matter, the threshold is on the 2/3, and we're also working on the balance of probability. We are looking at this matter on how the facts relate or place themselves on the table from the transfer of the properties and also the registration of the companies. I mean, it is clear, the facts are contemporaneous. Nobody, unless you don't need to be a rocket scientist to identify this whole thing, Honorable Speaker. And that is why, Honorable Speaker, for this reason, for this very reason, Honorable Speaker, I want to say that I support the impeachment. Please, let's make it early. Even if it's at 6, regarding Gachagua must go.
TJ Kajwang will be the last for the morning.
Mr. Speaker, just confirm to me that I can see that there is 1 minute to the hour. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I rise for a very simple reason, that if there is any member who came in this chamber believing that we or the members are going to impeach the deputy president without reason, they can listen to us and we can give them the reasons why we stand noonday to make this presentation. First of all,
Member for Machakos County, what is the problem?
What about the dissenting voices, Shuan?
The speaker has no way of knowing who is descending. Yes. Go on, Kajwang. Yes. Yes, Gusii, what is the problem?
Mr. Speaker,
TJ Kajwang, 1 minute.
I have come to make a very small presentation as the member of Ruaraka. First of all, having seen that the motion has been signed by 291 members. This House, single constituencies are 290. If 291 have signed and will vote, Gachagua must go. Number 2, we have not come here to vilify anybody. We have come here with facts, we have come here with evidence, and we have come here with a law. I want to be in a country where my son and my daughter, if he qualifies and if he's eligible, will get employment, will do business, will walk proud and tall, not because he comes from Waondo village in Nyanza, but because she or he is eligible. This politics of everybody must come from Mount Kenya. Mount Kenya. Usiguze mlima. Usiguze milima. We must show, Mr. Speaker, that this country is for us all. We must show, Mr. Speaker, that there are no people who are entitled more than the others. That there are people who fought for Mau Mau more than the others. Or that there are people who are more populated than others. And so this idea that they work for Kenya Kwanza government and that they must eat, it is their time to eat. This deputy president his mentality is that he got votes for President Ruto, and so it is his time to eat. For that reason only, I would vote, because I want a situation after we are through with elections, everybody, including me, is served because I pay taxes like everybody else. For the deputy speaker to go to...
Wamchomba. There's a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, is the member on the floor?
Which order?
Mr. Speaker, I'm addressing Mr. Speaker. You are not the Speaker. I am addressing Mr. Speaker. Stop heckling. You are not the Speaker. I'm addressing the Speaker.
Go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, is the member Honorable Kajiang in order to say that there is a mentality that the Deputy President has a mentality to eat? Does he have any gadget to measure mentality? Is that a fact? Can you prove? Can you prove that there is a mentality? Which gadget do you use to measure mentality?
Go on.
Check. Mr. Speaker, first of all, pronounce my name properly. I'm not Gachagua. I am Kajuang, not Kanjuang. Number two, Mr. Speaker, this is a problem. Everybody, I heard them call it Raira, Kanjuang. Some of you must learn that we are in a country for everybody. Nobody is powerful than the other. Nobody comes from a section of community. Today we will show that this country is for everybody. Mr. Speaker, there must be hygiene in leadership. There must be hygiene. You cannot trade with government, and you are the Deputy Speaker. Deputy President, sorry. You cannot trade with government, and then you are the Deputy President. You cannot trade with government, and you are a state officer. Even you who are sitting here, stop trading with government, so that you only have one work, which is an elected member of this house. So evidence has been laid before us, and we are clear on page 16 of this evidence that him and his family, first of all, he thinks that his family, it is all right if his family trades with the government. He has not read the Leadership and Integrity Act. You yourself, your wife, your mother, your son, your daughter must not trade with government, so that we allow enterprises to grow out there. Mr. Speaker, only on that basis, I think that there is a situation here which we must save. The third one, Mr. Speaker, he is principal assistant to the president. If we don't deal with this thing today, all vice presidents or deputy presidents will think that the president is age mate. There must be a distinction between a president and a deputy president. This one, at least the president has allowed him to chair the cabinet. At least the president has allowed him to be the chairman of IBEC. Now, well, the law has allowed him to be the chairman of IBEC. What would happen if, as the chairman of IBEC, he is only giving budget allocations to people from Mrema? What would happen if he is the chairman of IBEC, only giving budget allocations to people of his family? Mr. Speaker, the last thing I want to say, this presidency as it is so dysfunctional that even if we left it today, there would be a problem in presidency in such a manner that would undermine national integrity and national security. I don't need the information. I just have 1 minute to go.
Thank you. Finish up.
Yes,
Finish up.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, we are not going to impeach him because of what that speaker had talked about, that we are lynching or that it's a mob. We have carefully considered, and the law is that we are not talking about civil liability or culpability. We are talking about accountability. We are talking about political governance and political responsibility. And so all those things that he has said out there, he must take responsibility for. And we are politicians. We are not a court of law. He will be tried in Senate. Ours is just to initiate this process. And the Senate will ask very pertinent question. He is saying that all these things he got from his brother and so on. They will investigate and find out, did he pay tax for them? when he filed his report and said that he's worth so much, did he say that he also got something from his brother? Now, no, it is not here. You don't know. This thing is asked in the Senate. It is the Senate that is the trial chamber and they're investigating. So the Senate will also ask his return forms. He's also re-asked the KRA forms if these information are consistent. And so, in all the evidence that I've seen, in all the charges I've seen, I return a verdict that Gachagua must do what? Gachagua must do what? Gachagua must do what?
Order, members, will you be upstanding? Order, honorable members. It is now 1:09, and the House stands adjourned until 2:30 this afternoon.
ine ayomurimi wachandikire n'amakonde asebi mirimo gundo bono ekambani ya beya na buri chiburiao abana barosya biryogoria belt eriorigo konye goita makonde asebi miribiao na koreda rigesariya asamange iguro ya belt umerna na babwatani be kampani ya beya ase roadshow na Ndizi TV ase chinsemo chikubwatya kitariki 30 cy'umukinyo y'ikumi imeye county ya Nyamira nigo barabe ase chiro ya miruka town ya Nyamira chiro ya Kibirigo na boigo chiro ya Kimera kitariki 31 imeye county ya Kisii nigo barabe ase chiro ya Kiumbu omuchyokeroka chiro ya Masimba chiro ya Ugembo na boigo ase chiro ya daraja mbili ni nchumwensi monyora megerio iguru yugo kora amakunde kurwasebi meribya umugondo Wula butambe kurumu chubo songo edukane yemuyuka ekoni bintu byugutumika nyumba ibyukoni asiduka ukwagachira ibyuburimi n'ibindi binge imena isiko yorogonkorwa Gusii Owuru Superstores Limited buna bono koni abarinchira ya wholesale bune sukari omuchere amaguta y'ikinyini echumbi amabere chidaipa esabuni n'ibindi binge koni abari chituma cyukwagachira amabati emisumari chisimiti chirangi chisengenge chiwilbaro n'ibindi binge nigo bagukubugurira umusigo ekero kwagurire goikabuo asegeka gichinse 24 beka eoda yao ku Rwanda nsiyasure ensiweta usobatarire imiyo mu cyubusungo asamagacho AJM Towers Building angena Credit Bank gose Uhuru Complex Building angena Safaricom Customer Care Kisii usuba kirisimi asichinambechi Uhuru Superstores Limited, the people's choice, guaranteed lowest prices or your money back.
Asomwa Kenya Uhuru Superstores yonyolevi
kurikira bono ayebunu mwagachi kwa manyire duka okugenda kujya ibintu byose biriyugokorera imirimo yawo Osmo Traders Limited nigo babwate kitari cyo kwaranse ase nyumba yawo nabo igogobeka sinyasi bune babu egikoni living room nabo igo ekikobe kwesiko babwate sanitary wares buna chising chibakuricheze cyo cyonsi showers, towel holders, soap dishes, racks, mirrors na hand basins. Chirangi chonsi chiria chikuburukanibwa ne computer na boigo chiriche spray paints no chire. Mbabwete chipboard, buna chips and boards, MDF boards na chip boards. Hebinto au biogakora plumbing. Buna PVC joints, PVC pipes na chi water taps chonsi no chire. Boigo na bokugura chi curtain rods, hood screws, chigulu chonsi, door locks, chi pipe wrench spanners, screwdrivers, banyore, old Sansura building, angena Kisii main bus stage, Gusua Kisimi, asenamba, enotisano nebire, eye mokianda, inyeisano, inyeisano nemo, Osmo Traders Limited, customer satisfaction guaranteed.
Ano mwana w'ekyanga kya mitumba kira ky'abaana amu n'abantabanire na nigota gitego kinyorageka kyange bono Mama Tefi Mitumba Bells nigo akorobeire sabali entambe asago kireteire gisieli na munwa
Mama Tefi Mitumba egotogotoka se Imperial Building igera opposite St. Jude na ende RBN Family Bank. Mama Tefi ntubwate ebintu mbalimbali bya mitumba bona bono kyanga ky'abaana ntubwate chi household ntubwate chi wood ntubwate chi jacket ntubwate towels. We have all types of products kya mitumba baka ntubwate bikoro toboneka ntu introduce bikoro to na some slippers crocs igo toko barangeli munyara ko mogoja sama Mama Tefi Mitumba munyara ko mukwenyorera emisigo ya Canada grade 1 kero wachire Mama Tefi Mitumba ntubwate obosemia ntobanetia baligereri bali siko bali batete gochaka biashara bachicha sema Mama Tefi Mitumba elinde banyare ko bakonyora oboseminga nakibabonete bachaka biashara bya mitumba inki batakire bakore ko bwate chiri busta na 500 sema Mama Tefi Mitumba kwanyorere kero batokere number 1 elindo nyare ko bagokwanda na karoki kenyare ko bagego konya
atarere imeyumu cy'omusongo ase nyombere ya Imperial eyo chirigeraneti amune nyumba ya St. Jude ground floor room number 1 na number 2 akesimi na kubeka eoda ya olero Mama Tefi Mitumba Bells
abiro kama Mama Tefi Mitumba Bells ayudo bag maber at a low price bada wewe welcome Uchakia goseko gendrea obonchore bwa mitumba injumu Mama Tefi Mitumba Bells
Amariogo yemeteni gabeire richibwa se amaroire au nonya na yasinyire ase chinyagitari Super Medical Center egotoka somo cyobosongo nigotokwegokeriya kurubo wenya wetrasa marioga yo kurwase chinse chesko kurwaria tora maroire buna ulcers cancer asthma na yanda manke ayokoringori wa net machine chaito
ngoro cross mora daktari korwe company ya Super Medical Center egotoka somo cyobosongo igangorwa ritora maroire amange ande karawo ajine ntobwate chi machine chigo kumureka chiaro ranki kerobobe chigo kumureka umubero umugima wansero umutumba kainse na ichigo toteingi kerebo bya marwaire kyobwate twamanya kwa mariogo ana abani machine yengo murekera yarora metando kyabwate twaba mariogo itongo ikale mbali neba no mochio keroka neba ngirigori cia mariogo itona bako guikera neba Mombasa onya koro ekara wakire simu na bukurwari
ikaso mochio bosongo ase stage echigari otwakire simi ase chinamba chiko bwatia 0737746368 gose 0712526764
n'abantu abange bayeteire gana inde bagwenire igo totwara bwoba bonde bwense akara bwachire ese kwaranyura mariogo munaria nyagitari kwangire koigubiya moroire munaria ale chronic nkonyarwari tole
ayumure migiata kurworo gonkorwo Gusii nikisemo chiyetanaine wono na nkakiende yonsi tarira eduka ya Enokem Agrovet Limited nichisagia chaye bwenyorera mariogo yugusiarire bimeri mugondo amoyo chimbusuro endagira yetugo embego yetugo amariogo yugo itekenyambi mugondo chi supplement yetugo ebichuchu byogotuga na yanda mange na obare imeyumu chobosongo ansamangacho akenyoro Farmers Cooperative Plaza angena Market Plaza Urusagironde nigurule opposite Shell Petrol Station formerly Falcon Petrol Station Nabuigo Urusagironde nigurule nsemo ya Jogo angene skuru y'uburuso ya Jogo Primary Nabuigo ukuba kirisimi iliko manyamange Enokem Agrovet Limited growing healthier future one harvest at a time. Esukuru y'okwegerya Burundi bwa Kigali ya Rocky Driving School nige gukomanya buna mpabwatu bukorera ubya asibirengo ao byo Burundi bwa Kigali nabo kwegera ekerengo gya A2 B1 B automatic B professional C light track D1 echuchire PSV Burundi bwa kimatatu cha 14 seater D2 PSV Boda Express Counter Heavy Track PWD process cha BCD na B executive obuye bw'okwegira na Rocky Driving School mbulye buna ebirasi byabo nigo biri flexible chinga kichere cyonsi uratakase rituko nigo bagosomya omwaka mugima aborokia babo nigo bantire nikumbe amabati adumira Burundi bw'Kigali ya NTSA aserigo ryabene kugirule y'umucukizi asa basic mechanic basic first aid na yanda mange batalire imeyo rugonguru Gusii asebali imeyo mucukizi asenyumba ya Market Plaza niguchire asemiche Fugi Junction Naboigo Azumuchukil Gori mbabwati special offer karibu nyumbani kulire ekerasigia form 4 mwakere simi umu manager Rocky Driving School. Ndizi TV ubwansu bw'umuguzi. Ndizi TV ubwansu bw'umuguzi. Umurobiri ukubwatia nigo bekirwe igoro y'imyaka 13 naigo abalinse y'imyaka iyo nigo balinse ya morokeryo ya Bible.
Ndo mwanchi omurigere libona kirogenda tukubati miroberi yonsi ya Ndizi TV ngo kwariganya se umuroberi wo komenyo kuya yenense mo ya kabere ase torachi kogendera gose bwa mangi gore ycinchera tubwente koragera ndagira kitubwene takoria ngakikeye ganyore ikiye tanto beto gukwarira mange umumanyi bwa mangana yecindagira na beta utumanya ndagira kiye tubwene takoria balanced diet agatumanya ntubwate carbohydrates ntubwate proteins ntubwate vitamins na ndeni kale ngumuntu abwente koragera ase rituko Ono mwanchi muri nda senchira yabene ngo kwariganya asenga kiyega eriyo togendere gosembwa mangane nekero umuntu atarabwati mbashari cyayo kuri ndagire bwerere tasi kinga kibwerete ningi kirige ko kikemubera sumubiroya nendekere yanyarikane n'umuntu onyodero umuchando yuko gwatkana nuko taragera buya ningi nakyabwene tego ekonya gusine kyabwene tego kora eriyo kuira ni mubiroya ko base ensemo ebwe gose ko ba asenchira ebwerete none ngo kwariganya asenchira yabene nyiro no murubiro kore twasore na inche Evelyn Osero semo ya Facebook tonyarwetera Ndizi TV News Digital semo ya YouTube tunyarwetera Ndizi TV News iki aita kero kende naro tekerete komanya omugeni munarenge koro kuna ndine tukumwariganya sinchira bene abega gutonyorere tari yae nasa gutoka iri togendera gusanga mange karibu sana asante mwancho mutegerere achenkuru kumasikirubo nchino mo nyagitari bokoragero kuya use a nutritionist so karibu Kile munase obosemia kwa beto gotaiki yaeta ngwa beto gototsemia mangi gure chindagira chiri tubente kuri korende korengana mna gwatetu munta bwenerete ko kuri ndagera kulingana ne gasiri aho kora gose ningi keriare ando chabanda banke mbaka bachake gutara ne chindagera ege kugera banke bari konyora chingaki bono ngo nyare kanere muna kwa beto gotosemia chindagira tubente kuri gwatetu munta bwente kuragera kaneri tuko abwente gatano rituko ngo nyare kanere bona abantu mbaro batari konyara gose batari ko konyora chinga kicho kuragererio konyo umuntu akuri none ndagire